Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey, any youngers, it's me, your host, Jen Glantz, back with another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. What is up? What is going on? It's been a while since I had a guest on the show because when I first started the podcast, I had a guest every single week. That's like 52 guests a year, and it was fine and it was great. But after a couple of years of doing that, I was like, I'm just so tired of searching for guests to have on that aren't even a good fit just because I need a guest. So I feel like in year 2 or 3, I switched to doing more solo episodes, and then I would do like half guests, half solo. But then this year it's mainly been solo. I don't know why, but I have guests on when I find interesting people or when interesting people find me. So today I found a really awesome guest, and the whole topic of this interview is influencer. Like, maybe you don't want to be an influencer and you have nothing in common with influencers, and maybe you've always wondered what it takes to be an influencer and all of that. So I'm bringing on like a really cool guest, Emily Ward. She's a co-founder of Shine Talent Group. It started off as a PR agency, but then they started to change into influencer management. And Shine does so many cool things with influencers. They work with some of the world's biggest ones. Like, if you browse their website, you're like, oh, I know all these people. So many of them are badass women that I personally adore. So I wanted to talk to a co-founder today just to find out behind the scenes of what it's like to be like a high-profile influencer. How much money do they make? How do brand deals happen? How can anyone be more influential? And all of that. So I hope you keep pressing play on today's episode. You might learn something new, interesting, or even ways that you can make money off of your personal brand and your social media. Can't wait for you to listen. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz. Hey, Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you a question I ask all of our guests to kick things off. If I were to meet you at a party, how would you share who you are and what you do to a person who never met you before?
Oh gosh, like a social party or like a networking party? I feel like it's different.
A social party, because I don't like stuffy networking parties.
Well, I guess like either way, like I'd say that, I'm Emily and I'm one of the co-founders at Shine Talent Group from Toronto, but I bounce back and forth between our offices in Toronto and LA right now, and soon to be London. We're opening up the London office, so I'll be on the move come the new year.
Very cool. And what does your agency do? What do you do?
We do talent management for social influencers.
So this is what I want to talk to you about, because, everyone knows what an influencer is and how it all, has grown over the past couple of years. But in 2022, specifically, what does it mean to be an influencer? What does it look like to be an influencer?
Yeah, and I feel like the word influencer in itself has really changed. So when we started our company, we started with the name Shine Influencers, and then we rebranded a couple of years ago to Shine Talent Group, which seemed to resonate more both with the talent that we represent, and then also just we were speaking to different marketing managers and brands about what the benefit is working with these creators. I think like nowadays, when we talk about influencers or social talent, what that means is that it's people who have like incredibly high trust with the community that they've built online. Because the creator itself, it used to be back in the day, people who are really exercising these, aesthetic, creative like skills. But nowadays, we can have like people who have incredibly raw content out there who just have, great voices, strong voices, and have curated like a community, an audience who like care to hear about them, care to hear from them and what they're doing.
I think that's so interesting. And to me, it makes me happy that it's the landscape has changed from beautiful pictures, perfect posting to being more yourself, being more honest and vulnerable with your audience. What does that mean in terms of oversharing? If there's people out there that want to become an influencer, but they're scared they have to showcase every aspect of their life, what advice would you give them about narrowing in on their focus and their voice and their content in general without walking around with their phone up and recording everything all the time?
Well, I don't think people have to share everything. And I think like the talent that we represent, they have all kind of struck like a boundary that's comfortable for them in terms of like how much they want to disclose and share. I think that there's some talent who are more of like, like the vloggers who like that is their craft, is kind of sharing like the day to day, every, aspect of their daily lives. And then there's other talent who do focus more in on like on a specific niche, like be it, travel, which is coming back, post COVID, or, food or fashion. So I think you can go about it either way. And I think the rule is that you only share what you're comfortable with at the end of the day. Like there's certainly, people who have, cultivated an amazing audience because they have been somewhat vulnerable about a certain aspect of their story that people have connected to. But that's not the only way to, generate a community and a followership. So I don't think that there's any like straight rule on what to do besides that you just have to do what makes sense for yourself.
If there's somebody listening now who is almost like a micro influencer with a couple thousand followers, but they want to take this seriously, they want to get brand deals, they want to expand, what are a couple tips you would give them to grow their audience or really just try to post more engaging content?
Yeah. Well, I come from traditional PR background, and so does my business partner, Jess. And we always say, like, you got to go back to basics. Like, I feel like people get really caught up with the different, like, tricks and tips that go on online on how to beat the algorithm or what might be working trend wise, like at that moment. And like, surely being like educated and like trying to like invest time, like following people that who are successful to try to, pick up on some of the cues that they're doing is one way to do it. But at the end of the day, building community online is very much about building a community anywhere, and going back to basic networking tips is what people do to kind of like, to always kind of have like that stable growth. So that's like reaching out to other people online. It would be collaborating with other talent. It'd be now like going back to attending like live events, introducing yourself, kind of grow that followership like one by one. And it works. It's tried and true, and it really does work.
I know, I feel like people are like, I want to go from 1,000 to 6,000 overnight. And it's like, there's scams online that will, try to help you do that, but it's not viable. And I want to talk to you now about like the art of getting a brand deal and working with brands. What are some brands looking for, when they work with you and they work with your talent? What are they looking for? Are they looking for a person with a certain voice, a certain content, a certain demographic of audience? Like, what are they looking for generally in the influencers that they partner with?
Well, every brand is different, but knowing what makes you unique yourself is one of like the greatest points to go forward with if you want to be marketing yourself for brand deals. So we have represented talent over the years who have like huge followership, and we've also represented talent who have smaller followerships who are more successful in terms of volume of brand deals and finances than some of the larger ones. And that's because they really know what that unique customer is who's following them, and they're able to communicate to them very well. So I think in terms of talent who are looking to get into that brand collaboration space, really paying attention like to your insights, to your demographic, know who you're speaking to so you can share that with brands. That would be a really great first step. And then for people who are like really just starting out, I think you have to play around with it a little bit too. And that can be like just from the organic products that you use in your everyday life. I think brands, when they are reviewing different talent on who to partner with, they want to see that you're able to integrate product within your content in a genuine way. So I would play around with that on stories, but also for Instagram, like in your in-feed posts, because stories, as we know, they disappear. So if a brand is kind of like scanning through after maybe you sent them an inquiry, they're going to go back on your platform to take a look about, what you might be able to do for them. You want to have like some examples there of how you have endorsed a brand before, even if it's just an organic endorsement.
I think the big challenge for a lot of micro influencers or people who are just starting out that don't work with an agency or have representation is negotiating these deals. It's almost hard to find out, and I find this personally hard, is to know what your rate is, because yeah, you can get examples from other people of how much to charge, but ultimately it is a space where you can show your value and charge whatever you want and see who's interested. Advice you have for negotiating brand deals, creating a media kit, or just putting your value out there to make more money when working with brands?
It's a tricky one. It is, pricing is definitely a tricky one. I feel like we compare it sometimes like to the white t-shirt, right? Like I feel like there's white t-shirts out there that, can cost like $5, and there's white t-shirts out there that can cost like hundreds of dollars. So it really does like depend. I think when it comes to pricing, even regardless of your reach in terms of your followership, you have to think about like the amount of time that it takes for you to put together like that creative. So I would start with some sort of like base fee that you're comfortable with, that you make sense to you in terms of like your time spent like putting together like that whole shoot that you're doing, coming up with the creative concept, doing like the editing. If you have an idea in mind of like what you'd be comfortable with spending, or sorry, charging like for that amount, it's a really good place like to start. And then in addition to that, you're looking at your followership, you're looking at like the usage rights that the brand is looking for. Are they looking, for any kind of exclusivity? Is it something that is non-exclusive? Are they looking for exclusivity for like several months? And then you can start to like make increases. I think when it comes to negotiating with brands, if you understand why you're charging something, it's a lot easier to have a conversation with the brand versus just throwing out like an arbitrary number. So invest some time in like understanding why you're charging what you are, and I think you'll be really successful that way.
What do you think the future of being an influencer looks like? I mean, I feel like it changes every couple of years. So as we move into 2023, also with like new platforms taking off and things like that, what kind of tips do you have, or even hints of what it is going to be like to be an influencer in the future?
I don't think that influencing at the end of the day is that new. Like, yes, it's like the social talent side is like a newer industry, but like influencing as a whole, it's like super old school. So I feel like coming from a PR background, back in the day, like prior to any of this, when we would be working with a brand, we generally would go out and we try to find like the person in that, like the tastemaker, in that category. So if we were working with a food brand, we'd be looking for like the really great up and coming chef. Or if we were working with interiors, we'd be looking for like that great interior designer that like helps to set like the tone and style. So where people have like spoken about social influencers being, this new industry, and maybe this thing that's like fleeting will disappear, the actual like craft and the marketing tactic of working with somebody with influence has been around for forever, for as long as I've been working in PR. So I don't think that is going to go anywhere. I think the way the style, or as you said, like the platform, like will continue to change. We saw like an incredible shift towards TikTok over the past couple of years. I don't think out of our 200 plus talent who we now exclusively rep, there isn't one that doesn't have a TikTok channel. Very, very few, if that. So that was definitely like a shift in terms of platform, like which will stay. We did a big brainstorm recently, like with our senior team, and they were saying that interestingly enough, that they have been seeing more increase like back towards the aesthetic content that we haven't seen as much in the past, like few years. People have been doing a lot more like raw content. And they are starting to see a bit of a shift back towards, requests for more like content like delivery. So I think we'll see a bit more of like a balance between raw content, coming from TikTok and like IG stories, kind of balance with like more of like the curated content and posts. Also, we've been like hearing a lot more about Pinterest coming up again, campaigns coming through requesting Pinterest accounts, which I am a lover of Pinterest, and I always think it's great when we start to see campaigns going back towards Pinterest again. So yeah, it'll be an interesting year. It's like it's always changing. There's some things that we can, anticipate or predict, and there's always the things that will come up that we won't be able to. But as a whole, I do think the principles of influencing and like working with brands, they've always been there, and like they will continue to be throughout the years.
How many hours a day do you spend on social media?
Oh gosh, quite a bit. I mean, I feel like this is this is our world. So it's where our team is. We have 60 plus like employees, like as I said, like over 200 talent, opening up a UK office now. So I mean, there's quite a lot of time like spent online. I feel like we've always said that like the job, it's hard work, but it's not hard if it's something that you love and that you enjoy. And like we're so lucky that our team members who have come to Shine, like these are people who they're just so passionate like about the space, and they truly enjoy like being able to curate like their own rosters as well and find talent who they really want to support and promote.
If you could pick one social platform that you love the most, which one do you love the most and why?
I think because Instagram was where like Shine like started. So when we started back in 2015, and the space was so new, and especially in Canada where our first office was, there really wasn't anybody presenting themselves like as an agency for social talent. It was kind of, there were some people who had popped up and maybe were representing more like television personalities, chefs, like things like that. But we were really like among like the first to go out loudly and strong saying that we're repping like social influencers. And then there was like a kin who came to Canada, and they were kind of focusing on the YouTube space. And we invested all of our time like into like Instagram. So I feel like I'll always have like a love knowing that it was like the first platform that we really like focused on. And I do like I love the beautiful content that's there. I love kind of like that like magazine format that it kind of gives you from like flipping through. And we've had so many just incredible creators who have like grown their platforms, grown their voice like through Instagram. And I think it's a great space to be.
I agree. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think I spend most of my time on Instagram and then TikTok, and both of them are just tremendous in terms of getting your attention, keeping your attention, and allowing you to connect with such amazing people. I mean, Shine represents so many incredible people. Where can people learn more about you and also Shine?
Yeah, well, on Instagram, at Shine Talent Group. Website is also shinetalentgroup.com. And for anybody like who is interested in representation or just wants to learn a little bit more, there is a contact form like on our website, and our team goes through new talent almost weekly, vetting new talent, new opportunities. So it's the best place to go if you are looking for representation.
Amazing. And I want to ask you one final question. We end the show with this. The name of the podcast is You're Not Getting Any Younger. So I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger. So.
Oh gosh. You're not getting any younger. So I feel like you take advantage of every day. I mean, it's all part of a journey. I feel like I was just saying this morning that, like life, it's long. So there's so many different things and different chapters that you can take. So make the most of every day.
Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.